What's up everybody, Demon back, and welcome to the 7th episode of Godzilla Thon. Today we're going to be reviewing Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. This is a great movie. Now really quick, I'll start out by giving my personal connection to this movie. So, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster was actually one of the last Showa films I ever saw. So I bought Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and I watched the English cut, immediately followed with the Japanese cut, and I kind of fell in love with the Japanese cut. I don't really watch the English cut of this movie, rarely ever. But I don't have a deep nostalgia level for it like I have with some of the other movies like Mothra vs. Godzilla and King Kong vs. Godzilla. I mostly just enjoy this movie. The thing with this one, though, is that it's one of those movies that I really like that I just don't have a lot to say about, so I don't expect this review to be very long. Probably my biggest connection to this movie is, if you guys have seen that bookshelf in the background of all my videos, I built that bookshelf while watching this movie, so that's probably my biggest connection to this movie from last year, was watching this movie and building a bookshelf. Other than that, I don't really have a deep connection with it. So, getting into the plot, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, this came out in 1964 along with Godzilla vs. Mothra, or Mothra vs. Godzilla. So there are strange things going on Earth. It's the middle of the winter, but they're in this deep heat wave and they don't quite know why. Then all of a sudden meteors start raining from the sky. A princess is nearly assassinated. She's on a plane, but she jumps out the plane last minute because she gets possessed by some outside force that we find out later. She jumps out of this plane, and the plane explodes where she was going to get killed in it. These people tried to assassinate her. She jumps out and somehow survives. The explanation is really convoluted and kind of a dumb explanation, so we're not going to get into it. But a meteor crashes, and Professor Mirai, one of our very, very few carryover characters from Godzilla movies, for at least of the Showa series, Professor Mirai from Mothra vs. Godzilla, he shows back up, and he goes to check out that meteor, which is awesome. I love the connection here. This movie really does feel like one of the very few direct sequels of one Godzilla movie leading into the other. This one feels like one of the most direct sequels, and I love it. So, the inclusion of him is a great inclusion. His characterization is pretty much the exact same, and mostly because the movies came out 1 year, within the 1 year period together, and it was done, I believe, by the same writer, which is, so you'd expect him to have the same characterization as last time, which is great. So he's investigating this meteor. The meteor actually possesses strange magnetic properties, and it will sometimes turn magnetized, and things will come to it, and then sometimes it won't. This is actually, as we find out later, Ghidorah's kind of stasis chamber. This is what he's growing in. So Neko, I don't quite remember the pronunciation of her name. The Japanese news reporter, another news reporter. This is a lot of them so far. A lot of the Godzilla films have had news reporters. It's a good plot device. It makes sense why a news reporter would be there every time the monsters show up. So she's investigating the mystery in the 20th century, which is, first of all, the meteor. Second of all, which is also how she connects to Mirai, is through the meteor. But also, she's investigating this prophet that kind of just showed up out of nowhere, claiming to be from Venus and basically predicting the resurrection of Rodan. This girl is sitting there predicting the resurrection of Rodan. If you don't know, Rodan actually dies at the end of his solo movie. Well, it's not really a solo movie because there's two Rodans in the movie. But Rodan dies in a volcano, and in this movie it's explained that the volcano preserved him and kind of revived him, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but whatever. It's cool to get Rodan back in the movie. So she predicts the awakening of Rodan. She is revealed to be the princess that was nearly assassinated. Now, like I said, she claims she's from Venus because the thing that possessed her is actually her Venusian past. As it's explained later in the movie, people from Venus, the Venusians, came down and kind of procreated on Earth, and she just happens to be one of the descendants of them, which means she has some of their future predicting capabilities. So she predicts the resurrection of Rodan. It is revealed by the fairies of Infant Island on TV at this point that one of the Mothra babies has died. It's a really weird scene because the fairies seem to be on TV. It's almost like they're promoting Mothra, kind of. So these little boys on this show ask to see Mothra. The fairies show up and they're like, yeah, we'll hook you up. So basically what they do is they sing a song that allows all the listeners and viewers to see Mothra on the island. It's weird. And there's only one of the Mothras because one of them died from last movie. Also, another great connection, played by the Peanuts again, the fairies. Great connection to the previous movie because it's another one of those few carryovers we get throughout the series. So Rodan wakes up now when the dude from King Kong vs. Godzilla, it's not the same character, but it's one of those, it's that actor who's that, I don't remember his name, he's that goofy guy. He's the goofy guy from from King Kong vs. Godzilla, the goofy native, the one who could speak to the natives. He actually goes down into this volcano. It's weird. He goes down into the volcano to get a hat for money. Someone's hat flew off, and he goes down there to get it for money. And then all of a sudden, Rodan comes out of the mountain, comes out of the side of the volcano, and takes off into the air. So the Venusian girl correctly predicts Godzilla's resurgence as well. See what I did there? She says that she says basically, don't go on this boat. You're going to die if you do. And most of the people don't listen to her. However, the twin fairies who were headed back to Mothra Island, as they call it, Infant Island, they got off because they didn't want to get killed. They understood what the Venusian was saying, which you'd think they have some credibility. They should be like, yo, wait, she's telling the truth. Don't go on that boat, but whatever. So Godzilla shows up in the ocean and kills everyone on the boat. And then Godzilla and Rodan kind of destroy some cities. Not really a ton of destruction scenes with these two. They destroy cities, and they basically head on their way. Godzilla's suit in this movie is alright. It's the same suit from Mothra vs. Godzilla, but they changed up the one part of it that I liked. They changed the head. I really loved that menacing head with that big upper jaw that flopped around. I loved that suit so much, and I love the face so much. Whereas in this movie, they toned down the face. They made it smaller, made the mouth a lot smaller. The main reason they did this was presumably because they wanted to humanize Godzilla, because this is the movie where he starts to gear towards being a hero. He doesn't become a hero in this movie, but he gears towards that, and they wanted to humanize him by giving him some more nicer looking qualities instead of this blank dead face, which is what he had in the last movie. So the princess So then the princess is examined, and as she's being examined, it's to figure out why she believes she's from Venus. During all of this, during the whole movie up to this point, including now and until the end, the assassins from the beginning of the movie have been consistently trying to kill her. They have been consistently trying to do things to kill her. There's one point they break into a hotel room with her in it. They have a gun to her, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna kill you if you don't admit that if you don't admit that you're the princess, we'll kill you." And then they don't get the chance to because the Mothra fairies are running around there, and then it spooks them off. And then our main character, he busts in there and basically gets them out also. His name's Shindo. So she's being investigated on, and Mothra's fairies are hanging around with them. They're with Shindo. He's a cop in Japan who has basically taken it as his job to protect the Venusian until she realizes she's the princess, because he doesn't want her to die. His job was originally he was going to protect her from the assassins, but as everyone thought she was assassinated, he still decided, alright, this Venusian has to be the princess. I'm going to protect her anyways. He's a really heroic character like that. So the assassinators still continue to try to kill her in new and creative ways, I admit. It's not just like, oh, we're going to shoot you every time. There's one point when they turn up the electricity. So when they're testing the Venusian to try and find out why she thinks she's a Venusian, they turn up the electricity, the electric shocks that they were going to give her all the way so that Shindo flips the switch, it's going to fry and kill her. So they don't actually get to do that because Rodan and Godzilla are fighting at this point, which is an awesome fight. It's a fight that is consistently broken up throughout the movie to make it feel, throughout this portion of the movie to make it feel like there's still monster things going on. So Rodan picks up Godzilla and drops him crotch first onto an electric tower, and the electric tower explodes. Now all the power goes down, so the princess isn't killed. Then the big gunfight comes out underway inside of this little area. The assassinators are sent on their way. They basically have to flee. Godzilla and Rodan are still fighting at this point. It's an awesome fight until Ghidorah awakens. Now, Ghidorah's rampage and destroying cities is pretty cool, but I don't think it's as good as it could have been. I think it would have been cooler if we actually got to see him just wipe out a full city, and then he continued on his way. We don't really see that. We see him flying over some cities and some pagodas falling apart, and, every time he flaps his wings, everything will fall down. And then he has lightning that comes out of each of his mouths, and the lightning, he has 3 heads, as the title suggests. You guys have all seen the movie. So he has lightning that comes out of each mouth. It's destroying everything. It's cool. I just think it wasn't as much as they kind of hyped it up to be in the the start of the movie. They kind of hype Ghidorah up, and they're like, he destroys planets. He killed out Venus. He's a monster. He is a force to be reckoned with. And then, as we see in this movie, as well as especially next movie, he's not really all that he's made out to be. So, don't get me wrong, though, I think he's cool. So, Ghidorah is awakened. He's on a rampage. Mothra is called in by the fairies to help convince Godzilla and Rodan to fight Ghidorah. So, Mothra shows up. She stops the fight between Godzilla and Rodan. She gets their attention by shooting them each in the face with her pollen. This is still a caterpillar Mothra, keep in mind. So, she shoots them in the face with the pollen. First of all, it's like, why would Godzilla want to help her? Because last movie, she basically they beat Godzilla last movie. The two Mothra babies beat Godzilla in the fight. So why would he want to help her? He doesn't want to help her. I don't know why anyone thought that he would, but it is a cool little reference here. And then Rodan and Godzilla and Mothra, they have a debate, which is really interesting. Something that I don't really like is the monsters talking. I think it's cool that they can communicate to each other. I just don't think we necessarily needed the fairies to translate every word they said, because that kind of takes away from it. I think it, show, don't tell kind of thing. If you had them roaring at each other, and Mothra would, chirp up, and then Godzilla and Rodan would get all mad. That might have been better. I think it's alright, the monster talk is alright. We get to hear what they're saying, because the twin fairies translate, and they basically say, Godzilla and Rodan don't want to help out because they don't want to kill Ghidorah, because why would they? He's destroying humanity, and humanity has done nothing but hurt Rodan and Godzilla. They, with the testing of atomic weapons, we turned Godzilla into Godzilla, and he does not want to be Godzilla. He wants to be dead. Same thing with Rodan. We messed up Rodan pretty bad too in his solo film. So why would any of these monsters want to help the humans that don't like them? It's an interesting thing that they play around with, and then Mothra is basically like, well, this didn't work, and goes off to fight Ghidorah on her own. There's one addition in the English cut that a lot of people love, which is the inclusion of the line, "Oh Godzilla, what terrible language," when he is having monster talk and the fairies are trying to translate, and then they have that line. I believe in the Japanese cut you actually get to hear what he says, and it's not that bad, but you get to hear what he says. So then Mothra basically heads out to fight Ghidorah on her own. Now, Ghidorah basically wipes the floor with Mothra. She doesn't stand a chance. She's thrown through the air. After this point, after Godzilla and Rodan watch Mothra get her butt beat, then they all three team up on Ghidorah. It's a great monster brawl. I think this is the first time we had more than one monster fighting each other in these films. It's definitely the first time in the Godzilla franchise. I'm not sure if other franchises did it first. I believe this one does it first. So this huge monster fight comes out, and it is awesome. So it's a very tooth and claw kind of fight, as some people have described it. It is not much of beams going back and forth like it is in the Heisei series when you have things like Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. That's much more of a beam battle as opposed to this one where Godzilla's getting down and gritty, punching Ghidorah. Rodan's flying into him. I think at one point they drop Mothra onto him. Mothra bites his tail and is thrown around. It's awesome. There's some great scenes where Mothra rides up a hill on Godzilla. It's a really great fight sequence. Really awesome. I love it. I love this movie so much. Especially this end fight really makes it all worth it. I think the human drama in this movie is actually pretty good. I just think it sometimes detracts from the monster stuff. It kind of makes it feel a bit crowded. This human plot is very crowded because you have a investigation subplot with Mirai and all this stuff, and our news reporter. Then we have Shindo trying to protect the Venusian princess and all this stuff going on with the assassins, and it's a very crowded movie. So actually the assassin and Shindo wind up in another gun battle when the Venusian is basically like, yeah, I told you you'd all die. They wind up in another gun battle. Shindo, I believe he gets shot at one point. The Venusian falls off, and she falls off a cliff and kind of goes into shock. She doesn't die. So Shindo protects her, gets shot in the process. She goes into shock. The assassin is killed by Ghidorah, which is awesome because, Ghidorah, we'll talk about the allegory later, but Ghidorah kind of proves the point of the allegory, which is you all got to work together, otherwise you're going to die. And he does not work together, so he winds up dying. Like I said, we'll get into the allegory in a minute here. So the Great Monster Mash is born. It's an epic fight. Ghidorah actually retreats because the princess is saved. Ghidorah retreats because he cannot handle all three of these monsters at once coming at him with Godzilla's atomic breath. He can't handle all of this at once, which is funny. 3 heads, 3 monsters, and he still can't do it. So he flies off. I love how they don't kill him because that means that they can use him later and have it make sense. Things like, Anguirus will show back up in this series, and it's like, whoa, we watched him die, but they don't explain it. And then Rodan, kind of too, we watched him die, now he gets resurrected. I guess that's a good enough explanation, sure, but it's a little bit clunky. So I do like the fact that they don't kill Ghidorah. He flies away into space where he came from, which is awesome, because the thing that I really love about this Ghidorah, I'll talk about his characterization here. The thing that I love about Ghidorah is he is just a straight stone cold killer. I love it. He comes from outer space, which is something that I absolutely love. I love the idea of a space monster. They don't do enough with it in this movie. Next movie, they do a lot with it, but they don't do enough with it in this movie to make it really justified. The thing that I just absolutely love, though, is just the fact that we have a space monster come to Earth and the monsters of Earth have to defend against him. I think the space thing is a way better explanation than the Dorads from the Heisei series. I can't stand that explanation, but I think this is a way cooler one. Rodan as well in this movie. He has a great characterization. Him and Godzilla pretty much have the same characterization, where they're like, they start the movie out killers, they start the movie out evil, and then they realize we have to protect humanity because we have to protect Earth. So they're not necessarily protecting humanity; they're just protecting themselves and Earth. Mothra herself has the same characterization of last movie, but Ghidorah himself, he doesn't have much of a characterization at all, which is one thing that I love. I love the fact that Ghidorah is basically on the same playing field as Godzilla from 1954, where he is just emotionless. He'll kill anything in his path. He doesn't care. He'll just go for it, kill it, and he won't give a second thought to it. Whereas this Godzilla starts out the movie, destroys a little bit of stuff, and then kind of realizes the error of his ways. So I love that little thing going on with these guys. So that's the end of the Japanese cut. So we'll get into final kind of thoughts here. The English cut itself is alright. We have some missing human scenes. And then we also have they changed up. So the Venusian, I believe in the English cut, she's called a Martian. Now, I could be wrong because I don't watch the English cuts of these movies, or specifically of this movie is one that I just prefer the Japanese cut to the point where it's like, the English cut, it's alright. I'm not going to watch it because I have the Japanese cut. I do that with Mothra vs. Godzilla now. I still love the English cut of Mothra vs. Godzilla, and I still watch that one, but if I had to choose, I would watch the Japanese cut. So I believe they said she's from Mars. I know they changed the planet that she's from for the English cut. I don't know why, but they did. I believe they say she's from Mars. The human plot is good in this movie, in the Japanese cut and the English cut. The human plot is good. Like I said, it's just a bit too busy at times. Like, there's the scene when Godzilla and Rodan are fighting outside of this science laboratory, and inside the whole time is this whole thing going on with testing the princess, finding out what's going on with her, why does she think she's from Venus, as well as this whole assassination plot. It's a lot of stuff happening at once. Feels a bit crowded at times, although I don't quite mind it because I do like the human plot of this movie. Like I said, the Venusian explanation is that because she has Venus ancestors, she can tap into that in her time of need, but it makes her lose her identity. It's really, really weird, but whatever, it's alright. I still don't understand quite how she survived falling out of that airplane, something about like falling through dimensions or something really weird that I don't quite like. Other than that, the human plot is fine. The monster stuff is great. The special effects are really, really good. And for how little kind of straight action there is in this movie, like, the end fight is great, but other than that, we don't have a lot of straight monster balling. Like I said, Godzilla and Rodan fight, but it's not a ton of fighting. It's more like puppets kind of bashing into each other for a little bit. This whole suit fight at the end here is amazing, just because you have to think about the wire work and how incredible it is. The fact that they didn't have Rodan tripping up on Ghidorah's 3 heads as well as his 2 tails and Godzilla's tail, the fact that they had none of this tripping up over each other, the wire working of this movie, really incredible. Wire working will play a huge factor in Destroy All Monsters. What makes it so great is how well they work those wires to make these, like Godzilla's tail, it's a puppet. It's controlled by a wire. It's not controlled by the suit actor. How is he going to control it? He doesn't have a tail. Ghidorah's heads, the dude had to literally sit there. He was a big bulky dude. It's a great documentary, The Art of Suit Acting. It's not a documentary. It's like a 10-15 minute special, but it's this big dude who had to sit in there and hold a metal bar to hold up the frame of Ghidorah. He could not make the slightest movements without tripping up the wires, so he had to move perfectly on cue, otherwise things would go bad. And then Mothra herself, I don't quite know how they control Mothra. I think it's just like a little puppet. I know later on I believe they have like animatronics in the Millennium series, but at this point I'm sure it's just wires as well and puppetry work. Other than this, guys, other than how impressive it is, the fights themselves are really great. I feel like later movies in this series will try and replicate this to little success, where it's a down and gritty monster fight. Godzilla vs. Gigan comes to mind, where they try and replicate the down and gritty kind of tooth and claw, kind of fisticuffs kind of fighting style. But Godzilla vs. Gigan was much more closely choreographed, so it didn't feel as raw as this one does. So I don't think they all worked to the success of this one. Destroy All Monsters, however, I think amplifies this kind of down and gritty kind of fighting style. Really, Destroy All Monsters, especially that end fight, is absolutely amazing. I can't wait to get there because I really just want to rewatch that movie. I mean, I don't really watch these movies out of sequence when I'm doing Godzilla-thons, and I do a Godzilla-thon every year, so I can't wait to get to this one and watch Destroy All Monsters, because that is an amazing movie. So, getting into the allegory, there's a lot of the same allegory from Mothra vs. Godzilla, with no nuclear bombs, which is kind of Honda's thing. He was very anti A-bomb, understandably so. In hydrogen bomb, we bombed Japan. We as Americans bombed Japan, and so him being a Japanese person, he's going to be against that stuff. There's a lot of that kind of anti-nuclear weapons thing going on here, as well as we are all people of the same planet who need to work together, which is a great thing, because here's what I was talking about earlier. You have all of our human characters working together for the common good. They're working together to help this princess, help out the world by getting Mothra to fight Godzilla, or not fight Godzilla, but getting her to convince Godzilla to fight Ghidorah. Everyone's working together in this movie, and then you have the assassins who are on their own plan. They're doing their own thing. They don't give a crap about the monsters. They don't give a crap about this or that. They just want to kill this princess for political reasons. Also, I believe that's Honda criticizing politics, which, I don't think any movie criticizes politics as well as Shin Godzilla, but that comes out like 60 years later, so, or 50-something years later. So Godzilla and Mothra and Rodan all have to work together to fight Ghidorah. It's a really good message from last movie of we're all people of the same planet who need to work together, and in this one, just like in the last movie, they actually do work together and they achieve their common goal. There's also some other analyzations I've recently heard, which are some Cold War analyzations of Godzilla equaling America and Rodan equaling Russia, and they're fighting on their own terms against, their own battle, and Mothra, who represents Japan, just happens to be caught in the middle, and then Ghidorah represents the fears of China having their huge nuclear arsenal and possibly rivaling both of them. I don't think that quite happens in the Cold War. Nothing to that effect happened. We didn't all team up against China, obviously, otherwise things wouldn't be as they are today. So, I don't quite think this Cold War allegory lands, but a lot of people have been saying it's true. I was reading up online about this stuff. A lot of people say it's true. I guess if that's what you want to take away from it, is that Ghidorah represents the fear people had of China. Sure, I guess. But the music itself, Akira Ifukube, he kills it. He always kills it. So this movie is really great music. Not as good as last time. Mothra vs. Godzilla has some phenomenal music. This one is good. It's not as good as last time, though. Like I said, the special effects are great, minus Godzilla's face. Godzilla's sculpt doesn't really get better up until Destroy All Monsters. The overall Japanese cut, my rating for it would have to be an 8.5 out of 10. Not that I don't like this movie, obviously that's a good score. I like this movie a lot. I don't like it as much as any of the others so far, other than Godzilla Raids Again is an awful movie. Can't stand that movie at all. So this one in 8.5 out of 5. It's a really good movie, really great Godzilla movie. It's a great starter, I feel like. If another great starter if you want to get someone into more of the superhero kind of Godzilla, start them with this one, because he's not a superhero. This is his transformation from villain into anti-hero. He'll become a superhero later. Start them with this one so they can see where it all goes down and why he changes sides. The English movie, the English dub, I'm going to give it an 8. Sometimes the voice acting is alright. And then the English dubs are never really as good as the Japanese cut, so still, it's not a bad movie, the English cut. If you want to watch the English cut, go ahead and watch it. I'm not going to be a Godzilla purist and say you have to see the Japanese cut, otherwise you're a phony fan. That's just BS, but thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. D-Man, out. See you guys next time for Invasion of the Astro-Monster.